I'm going to talk about an important topic today. It's about how to pick the right commercial property for you. If you're a starter investor in the commercial property space, this video is absolutely for you, and you should watch all the way to the end, or I'm going to give you some really action steps for you to move forward really quickly in this current market. Now, the most important thing to look for when you're deciding how to choose the first commercial property is fundamental. Let me tell you why. The reason is, if you chose the wrong property, it's going to sideline you for at least 5 years as the market recovers. If you chose the wrong property with the wrong returns, the wrong strategy behind it, it could be as much as 10 years to recover. So you don't want to make those fundamental mistakes. What you want to do is pick right, but not be so niche that you stay in the market for 2 years before you find a property. And that all comes down to strategy, but having a bit of a forethought on the future. So let's get started. What is the key points to look for when you're looking for your first commercial property? Now, if this video is of interest to you, and if you found it useful, please just hit the subscribe button and the bell, and you'll get notifications of future videos. Now, how to pick the first one. I've got a couple of points I've just jotted down this morning so I can make sure I cover all of them for you. So there's 3 big considerations to think about when picking the right commercial property for you. Firstly, is it that you want a stable income? If you want a stable income, your first commercial property needs to be boring. Let's face it, boring, right? And boring can be really, really good. Why is boring really, really good? It means it gives you stable income, year in, year out. It's going to deliver the same returns, expected growth, expected cash flow, right? What are some of those properties? So that's your medical, that's your childcare, that's your service stations, that's your properties with tenants, and that could be even a retail property with a wellness center, a beauty therapist, or a restaurant or a cafe on a really long lease, like 7 or 10 year lease, right? So what does that mean? Like, what does stability mean in cash flow and growth, and how does that relate to you? So let's say you were going to buy a medical center or a childcare center, right? You're going to be paying a lot of money for it. So you're not going to be buying something sub 2 mil that's going to be a childcare center or medical center. It's very, very rare. And I'm talking about freestanding. On terms of a strata, you can probably find something like a medical practice or a specialist or a psychology clinic that's less than $1 million. But typically these purchases are going to be 3 to 5 million, mostly $4 to $6 million. Now, we help our clients get into those, especially overseas investors or investors looking for that stability in their portfolio. And your portfolio can have multiple strategies, but if you're just looking at stability, right? So if you're buying a property 3 to 5 million and you're looking for childcare or medical center, the returns are not going to be huge, right? They're not going to be huge. They're going to be probably somewhere around 5.5%, right? Give or take. You might get closer to 6, depending if you go regional, staying metro, how long the lease is, and how much higher you're putting in the price, right? So the average is about 5.5%, right? In a really buoyant market, it has gone down to 4.5%, but in a stable market, it's about 5.5%. So it's about $55,000 on every $1 million you spend. So on a $2 million, it's 110. On a $3 million, it's about 165,000, right? 165,000, and then 240 on about 4 mil, right? So what does that mean for you? Well, each year, you know the tenant's there because they're hugely invested in there. So medical fit out, childcare fit out, service station fit out, all of those fit outs, hugely invested in there, right? So they fitted all of that out, right? And each year they're paying a base rent. So they pay a base rent, and that base rent may be, like we said, $240,000 or $4 million. Now we know they're going to pay that, and we know that each year there's going to be a rental increase. And that rental increase may be 3, 4, or 5%. Most of the time it's going to fall between 3 to 4%. So each year you know there's going to be a 3% rental increase on that, or 4% rental increase on your $240,000. So $240,000 by 3% is about $7,200 to $9,600. So give or take somewhere between $7,000 to $9,000. That's where the increase is. You know that's going to end up in your pocket every year, and that's going to ward you off inflation. Now, you know you're going to get some capital growth. The capital growth is going to be as the market plus what you're getting in terms of your rental increases. So it's probably going to sit somewhere around that 5% mark. Now, with that in mind, if you're looking at that kind of investment, so that means you get 5.5% in cash flow 5% in growth. Your overall return on investment is about 10.5% on a yearly basis, taking account cash flow and growth. Now, we haven't taken account how much your mortgage is going to be. Everyone's individual. Sometimes some people buying it with cash purely because they're retiring and they can retire on $240,000 and get their annual growth, and also their returns continue to grow each year because there's a 3% rental increase each year. So, instead of buying bread at $5, $7, and in the future $9 a loaf, we now can afford it a little bit better when there is extra rent coming through. So that's a pretty boring investment. That's our stable investment. Now, of course, if you're paying a mortgage on it, and then you don't want to be actually leveraging with this type of property anything more than 65%, but preferably around 50% is where your leverage would be for a property like this, because the returns are actually quite low in terms of the cash flow base, right? So it's 5.5%. If you go and borrow your whole $4 million, you're going to be really, really negative. If you borrowed $2 million, then you're going to be able to, which is 50%, right? $2 million in the current interest rate in the commercial space of about 6.5%, you're going to be about $130,000. So you get about $90,000 in your pocket, right? So you're still getting a reasonable cash flow after you have 50% leverage, and you're able to get some growth as well. Nice, stable income, consistent growth. You had some plans to consistently pay down some money over time. Doesn't really matter. Over a 5-10 year trajectory, you are going to see that property pretty much double in value, if not more, right? So you've got your capital growth, you've got your cash flow. Best of both worlds, right? That is stable retirement income. And ultimately, we all need one of those, because those are willable assets we can pass on to our kids, and they can continue to reap the benefits of our hard work. Now, that's stable. Now, you might not be in that stage because you don't have $2 million to put in as a deposit, right? Let alone cost and everything else, right? So how do you get to $2 million? Now, and that makes a difference of picking your first commercial property. And this is why most people get confused, because they think this childcare center is what they need. Whereas in their age bracket and their strategy, they should be starting with something maybe high risk to start with, right? High risk to start with versus the stable, boring property. Or potentially you might be looking at something where it's just pure cash flow, where you're not looking at growth, you're looking at pure cash flow, because right now you're trying to replace your income. So these are your 3 different strategies, right? So you might, depending on your age bracket, where you are in your work situation and your family situation, this stable income may not be right for you right now, right? Now let's talk about high risk, the other side of stable, right? But before that, I do want to ask you a favor. If you've been enjoying this video, please do give me a like, right? A thumbs up, a like. Please spread it so other people get to know about commercial property. Please join my community of like-minded individuals, a free Facebook group when I can tell you about our latest events, latest hot deals, and latest areas to buy your commercial property. On top of that, if you want more in-depth information, there's always lots and lots of other videos on this channel, so do check it out. And I know there's 3 things, but all of these are absolutely free and to help you move forward in your commercial property journey. So let's get back to the high risk side. So what exactly is classified as high risk? Doing a development project, doing an uplift project, trying to manufacture and grow that equity of yours much, much faster. That is what counts as a high risk. So high risk would typically mean that you buy something with a short-term lease. So we're not talking about childcare medical centers with stable tenant. We're talking about a tenant that is going to be short list. So that means that we're looking at a tenant that might be on a month-to-month, a tenant that might have 1 year to go on their lease and they may or may not renew. We might be buying an asset class that's not the favorite in the market. So we might be buying an office space versus a warehouse space where everybody likes. We might be buying in an area that's slightly out and not the popular area or the area that has boomed. So we're looking at things that are not the perfection. And what we're trying to do in our process of owning it is to create that perfection, right? It's to make it perfect during the time we own it. So what does that mean? That means that you could take a property that is vacant, put a tenant in there, and get an equity or an uplift on that property. So let's say you buy a property for $1 million, you advertise, advertising costs, holding costs, you put a tenant in there for, let's say, $80,000 because that's that's got to be, the numbers got to work out that way, right? All of a sudden that property might be worth $1.3 million, right? And you've made yourself a 20 to 40% uplift, right? It is high risk because there's no guarantees how long the tenant will take to come into the property. There's no guarantees how much your holding costs will be if the interest rate fluctuates. And of course, the time and money and effort you have to spend on engaging agents, talking to agents, vetting tenants, getting legals done, as in leases and everything else, all of those things could take a while. But that is a risk you take. But ultimately, it means that you could get 20 to 40% return on your money in a short space of time, allowing you to move towards the $2 million you need to get to that stable income where you have willable assets for your kids in the future. So that means that you could take, you might be putting in on $1 million purchase, $300K, right? You might come back at the end of it with anywhere from 40 to probably, if you do it right, $100,000 extra to your $300K you just spent on that property, right? So that's where the figures and the numbers, and where you need really a professional team to actually help you, guide you through this. But that is effectively the riskiest strategy in picking that property. So if you're looking at that high risk level because you've done some developments, you've done some renos in the residential space, and you want to now do it in the commercial space, this is where you're going to need a lot of education, because if you do it wrong, you're literally going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? If you did it in the residential space, it doesn't mean automatically you can do it in the commercial space, because you think you have the knowledge, but everything's treated differently in the commercial, especially in the uplift field, right? So, and we have a specialist course all about uplift. It is our platinum course, and in that course we take some beginning to end how to negotiate, and we take them through and we handhold them through their first deal. So find out about it more by booking in for a strategy session, because there's a lot of vetting. We need to know we're a good fit before go forward, right? Now, and we only take a select few, and we open that once a year. But on top of that, what the classic feature of that property is, it's not going to be a childcare or a medical center or a petrol station. What it is going to be is it is going to be a property that is either it can be a retail property, an office property, or warehouse property. It needs to have some feature that you can actually add value to, whether that's building a mezzanine floor, splitting a large office space to smaller, adding al fresco outside dining for the restaurant or cafe or retail, but also that there's an uplift in rent once you renovate it. So the tenant might be paying, say, $100 a square meter in the warehouse space. Can they go to $150 a square meter? They may be paying $300, $400 in the retail space. Can they go to $600? Same with office. They might be paying $200, $250, can they go to $350, right? That is the question you need to answer. Demand, you need to look at the demand, and you need to look at, typically most of this can be done either in regional or metro, but what you're looking for is a set formula and the metrics around it. Can you get those uplifts and whether those demands are there, right? And that is what you're looking for. So when you're picking the first commercial property, how to pick the right one, you've got to think, is it stable income? Is it uplift, right? Do I need to get more money? Do I get more deposit, right? So I can get to my stable income. So if you're starting out and you've only got 500K and you go, I've only got 500K, I'm not going to be able to get to if I just spend all the 500K on my stable income, that's it, I'm tapped out, I can't move I can't move anymore, then you might need to start with that high risk project, right? And that is your uplift, right? So that is the two segments, right? And you either one camp or different, and they're two different profiles. You can't say, I want this uplift, and then mentally think, I'm going to find this stable property. Not really going to happen, right? So you either one or the other. And understanding which one you fit into is fundamentally what we do with our clients when we start out with them in our strategy call, is to help them understand which one you are in, right? So those ones, right? And then number 3 we're looking at future potential. So that's number 3 line, right? We've got 3 lines, right? Our company is built, so Unicorn Commercial Property is built on 3 things: cash flow, growth, uplift, right? These are the 3 strategies, and we have hybrid strategies. This is our unique system. We have our hybrid strategies to help our clients get to the next level in commercial property. But in this, what I'm sharing with you is how we help them formalize, pick the right commercial property. So we talked about stability, right? As the first one. We talked about the high risk, which is about risky uplift. And now I'm going to share with you the future potential, right? That is that one, right? And what does that fit? Who does that fit for? That is fit for a client who is say they're really, really busy professional. They're really, really good at what they do. They're earning great income at the moment, but they know they need to start building that nest egg. So if you're a high-end professional in your 40s, maybe early 50s, and you're making really good money, so you might be in IT, you might be a doctor, you might be a specialist, you might be an accountant, lawyer, whatever it is, you're making really good money at the moment. You are also highly leveraged, and you also have a lot of, I suppose, debt and commitments and travel, kids, private schools, mortgages, all of those things. And you're realizing you're doing all of this and there's nothing left in the pot. And then if you continue to do this for 10 years, you still have nothing in the pot and you don't want to be there. You need to start building up that nest egg. This bit, the future potential, is important for you to consider versus stability, right? A lot of times, what the fundamental mistakes that other buyer's agents make is that they take the thought process of these high-end individuals and say, hey, they are, this is their situation, highly leveraged, earning good income, need a nest egg. I'm going to buy them, find them something stable. Wrong strategy. Absolutely wrong strategy, right? Because what they actually need is the future potential strategy. Because they're not looking for now. They're looking for 10 years from now. They're not looking for now, they're looking for 5 years from now. Right? So if you buy them a childcare center, the childcare center stays like that for 30 years. It's great when you're transitioning and you're using your super money and you're in your 60s or 50s and that's it for you and you've sold out of a business. This is it, right? I want to will this to the kids. Great. Not really going to give you your retirement income and give you much of that exponential jump if you are a high-end professional needing a nest egg. What you need is actually a future potential property. A future potential property is the property may not be producing a huge amount of income right now. It may not be the best type of tenant right now, but it has some fundamentals. The property's in a really, really great location, really sturdy property. So we're talking probably freestanding over a strata, slightly higher than price than the market so that you're getting above the average purchasing bracket, right? You are looking for profiles where the property can sustain maybe 2 tenants in the future or 3 tenants in the future. Currently may have 1 really good tenant in there, but can be split up in the future. Definitely can do that. But also it can have a range of different uses in the future. So it can probably, a building can be refurbished to be a medical center, a dentist surgery, whatever it can be, right? It may have development potential that is not realized in this area right now until 10 years from now, right? And that might work really well with, let's say, a mechanics that's on an old petrol station that's stopped, that is actually stopped being a petrol station. So they've removed the tanks or they've concreted the tanks in, right? That may be it, right? That may be it, right? And then you go from there to that in 10 years' time, as the area gentrifies, they can put a DA in and get an extra 20% in the sale price. The intention was never to develop, but that they can get the extra 20% when they're ready to go into that more retirement. And that exponential kick is what gives them a better retirement, right? And this is what makes the Helen Tarrant strategy and the unicorn system so unique, is because we understand fundamentally investor needs, right? And if your buyer's agent doesn't understand that, you should be checking out Unicorn Commercial Property. Our link is below, helentarrant.com. Listen to our other podcast videos to find out a bit more about how we can help you, right? So here, if you're that type of investor that you don't need it right now, you could be buying a property that could be early 5s, late 5s, could be 1% less than the current market. But you might find that the tenant could be on a really long lease, still got 5 years to go, so they can rent probably may double once they come off that lease. Now, a classic example is a property that I bought in Chatswood in Sydney. It's negatively geared. I've never had a negative geared property. This is my only negative geared commercial property in all the things I own in my portfolio. The reason I bought it is because the rent was so ridiculously below market. Like, it's literally 50% below market, right? Tenant next door is paying 85K. My tenant's paying 55K. Right? And that's gross. So by the time I take that money out, it's about $45,000 or $40,000, right? But I know the value of that. But the tenant's also on a really crappy lease, but really long lease. He's got 9 years to go on that lease. Now, if I hold out for 9 years, I bought that property for $2 million about 18 months ago. If I hold out for those 9 years, my $2 million property will be well in excess of over $5-6 million, right? And my rent will go from $50,000 or whatever the increase and double. Right? So I'm holding out for the long term. I don't need it now. Now, I'm falling to that category. I don't need it now, but I love to do this in the future, right? And so that's a little nest egg part in the future. And for me, it's like, once I do that, I sell that, I give it to the kids, that's their deposit for their homes, right? And that's what I'm putting in place, right? So you got to look at what is it that you are searching for. So how do you pick your first commercial property depends on any one of these strategies. So if you are in that future value, future potential category, camp, then what you're looking for is a property that may be undervalued now, but have huge potential to grow in the next 5 or 7 years, 5 or 10 years, right? And that it gives you enough to break even now with all of your loans to hold tight, right? So on the commercial loan, it might be that it breaks even, right? Over time as the interest, or maybe it might be a little bit slightly negative to start with, right? But over time as the interest rate comes down, you're going to be positive, you're going to break even, it's going to hold its own for those years. And once you're ready to utilize that, it's like when you're ready to use that weapon, when you're ready to utilize that, it gives you the jump you need to get you to the next level, right? Because if you were a high-end professional and you use this future potential property, it could be just holding its own for 10 years. When you're ready to quit your job, let's say that $2 million property is worth normally in the market in 10 years time, $4 million, but because you've got that extra development potential, you might get 5.5 for it. And you might have a loan against it all these years, holding itself on an interest only loan for $1.5 million. All of a sudden, you've made an extra $1 million or $1.5 million, right? Yeah, there's some capital gains, but you still get more money in your pocket, right? So you might clear out of there with 3.5 or 4 mil. What does that equate to? We come back to our stable strategy on 5.5% yield on a childcare. It's $240,000, right? Each year, passive income in your pocket with that one property. Today, buying it at $2 million, $2.5 million on a $1.5 million debt, if you held it for 10 years, you're going to get your goal. You can return $240,000 net. Like, I mean, when you retire, you don't need as much, so you won't pay as much tax, right? And I'm sure you'll have other assets, but this is all part of the long-term strategy. So if you're a high-end professional, this is for you. Right? That strategy is for you. And that's why you need to talk to us here at Unicorn Commercial Property, because we understand fundamentally how investors work and how one property choice can ricochet across the board over the next 10 years, and how picking that right property with the right strategy is so fundamental to moving forward in your investment journey. It doesn't matter whether it's commercial or residential. The most important thing is moving forward and picking the right property and knowing what that property serves in your portfolio. So find out more, do subscribe, like, comment, but there is a free obligation call beneath. So make sure that you click on that, come through, let's have a chat, and let's put a detailed plan together about your future.